Welcome to another episode of Crosstalk. My name is Kevin Tocci, and I will be your host for the next 30 minutes. Now, as you've become aware of this particular program, what we like to do from time to time is talk about some of the things that are going on in the two communities that we serve, whether it's Whitman or Hanson. It could be a community issue, it could be an upcoming event, it could be a local event, and that actually is what we're going to sit and talk about for the next 30 minutes today. We have a great show that is going to be hitting the stage at the end of this month and early December, courtesy of the folks over at the Massasoit Theatre Company. Joining me to my left is none other than Jennifer Spagone and Nathan Fogg. They are with the Massasoit Theatre Company, and we're going to talk about A Christmas Carol, seeing that these two individuals actually did a adaptation of Charles Dickens' version of A Christmas Carol. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you here. A little background on each of you. Of course, Jennifer, you are not only did you do the adaptation with Nathan, but you also are a costume designer in the show, and you are a costume designer, correct?
That's right. Yep. I'm kind of stepping out of that role doing this adaptation with Nathan, but I've been the costumer with the Massasoit Theatre Company for 13 solid years and seasons. And I started there in 1997, which is a little further back than that. So I did my first show there in 97 and became part of the theater staff in 2000.
What's some of the challenges you've had to face over the years when it comes to doing costumes and getting pieces that are time specific and stuff like that? What's it been like?
Sure. Well, the interesting part of the job is that it's always different with every piece that we do. It's a different time period that you're trying to recreate. But the biggest challenge of costuming, I feel like, is supporting whatever storytelling is happening. So the costumes really need to help move the story along and support the story visually. And so that's really the challenge of good costuming, I feel.
Now, you've done some costumes for the gentleman next to us. He's directed a number of shows.
Yeah, lots of shows. Yeah.
Lots of shows. I mean, what's it like working with the various directors and trying to get kind of really hone in on their vision?
Right. Well, that's the other trick to costuming, too, is to try to help the director realize whatever vision they have and try to have it match. So lots of conversations with the director about what their vision is, and it always helps if the director is a good friend of yours, so that you can really have those in-depth conversations about what they're feeling about it. But yeah, you really want to try to please the director and give them what they have in their mind. So okay. Yeah. Nathan,
yes. You are not only a co-story adaptationer with Jennifer, yep. But you're also somebody who has done a lot of different things. Not only are you somebody who can be the lead in a show, but you can be somebody who can direct a show. You've done that, but in this particular one, you are a set designer.
Yes.
Talk to me about all of the different things that you've done for Massasoit, the Massasoit Theatre Company, and even beyond. I
joined the Massasoit Theatre Company during 1993 as a student. I was still a high school student at the time. And anything goes, and I kind of cut my teeth on that stage in various productions throughout the end of my high school year, and then I attended Massasoit and was part of the theater club there and kind of...
Dramaticos.
Yeah, and I kind of, well, back then the theater club was the Massasoit Theatre Company, and then it kind of changed over. And during that time I have directed, choreographed, set designed. I've done some costume design for other theater companies. I was on the board of directors for the Winter Playmakers for a number of years. So I'm kind of all over the place, and I got into all the different facets of it because I found them to be unsatisfactory in productions I was in, because I was an actor first. So when I started getting into costumes, it was because I wanted my costume to be good. When I started getting to set designs, because I didn't think the set designs we were working with were good enough. So I was like, oh, well, I'll try that. I'll try this. So I'll try and make props. I'll try and do lights. And so here we are now, God, 1993, so 20...
Lots of years later, yeah.
22 years almost.
22?
Yeah.
Okay.
22 years.
From 93, yeah.
Right?
Just about.
Going on 22, so 21. And so for this project, I'm the set designer as well as I helped adapt the script, and which has been kind of a nice, happy marriage because we were the people responsible for how the script has played out, so we kind of have an intimate working knowledge of what we want the show to look like.
Right.
Right? Because we started with writing the script. It's like, well, as we worked through the process, we talked about, well, how do we want this to look? How do we want that to look? What do we want this scene to feel like? Which is such an arbitrary conversation. I mean, what does the scene feel like?
Yeah.
Whether it's warm, whether it's cold, whether we want it to be scary, whether we want it to be, inviting. And so the design process, I think, for me, really started while we were writing the script.
Absolutely, yep.
Because it became, well, how is this scene going to transition into the next scene?
Right.
And we need a quick costume change here. We need to write more dialogue. Because we're wearing multiple hats, it became like, okay, well, now we need to facilitate all the technical needs that we're going to be responsible for later within the structure of the script. So I think that was kind of an advantage, actually, because we really put a lot of thought into the technical aspects of it as we were writing the source material.
I guess I would ask you both, what do you feel is the beauty of community theater? What is the beauty, Jennifer?
I think the nicest thing about community theater is it gives the talented people who live within our community a chance to showcase their talent. A few years ago, we did A Streetcar Named Desire. We had a great actress from the North Shore play Blanche Dubois, and she made a comment to me. She said, where else am I going to go and get to play Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire than in a local production? So it gives the actors that live in the community a chance to do their dream role, or to sing that song that they're just living to sing on stage. So it really gives them that vehicle where they might not have it otherwise.
Yeah, your thoughts on community theater. I mean, I kind of, when she was talking about that, I think of some of the big voices and the people that have been doing theater on the South Shore, whether they have their own performance schools or if they're just somebody who loves performing. You can attest to that, can you not?
Yeah, I think one of the strongest elements of community theater is not only the performance opportunity, but also the exposure that it gives the local communities to an art form that they may not otherwise be exposed to. Because today, to go in town to see a professional production,
big money.
It's big money.
Yeah,
so if you're taking
and it's between the ticket and parking. I mean, I don't know which
the
one
ticket,
it costs
parking,
more these days.
dinner,
Hundreds
souvenirs.
of dollars. Yep.
And I mean, the ticket themselves these days are running $120.
$150. Yep.
Yeah. So you take a family of 4 to a show in town, you're looking at an evening of $700
at the least.
And not everybody can afford that. So if it wasn't for the local productions, people wouldn't have the opportunity to experience live theater. And I think it's important for there to be avenues for that, because especially with arts funding being cut left and right always, it's always the first thing to go. In our schools at every level, you have kids that have never seen a live show, ever, and don't have the opportunity to perform them at school.
Right.
Like I did when I was a kid. I mean, I got into theater in my elementary school, right, because they did children's theater. And that's when I started. That's when I kind of got the theater bug. But those programs are kind of gone now. So we've tried to incorporate a lot of community in the show.
Yes.
Last year with our production of Wizard of Oz, we teamed up with the Mary Baker School in Brockton.
Yeah, that was fantastic. We had folks here to talk about it.
And we're looking to do something similar to that this spring. So we're really trying to foster a community environment both on the stage and in the seats.
Talk to me about adapting the original, novel of Charles Dickens and tweaking. What was it that you guys have done with this timeless classic and kind of made it your own?
Well, we talked about doing this show, and there are scripts available, but the Dickens novel is public domain. So if you want to, you can adapt the novel and write your own staged version of it. So that's what we decided that we would go ahead and try to do. I've always loved this story since I was a young girl, and I love to see the different versions of it and the way that it had been adapted for movies and stage and all the different ways. And then I decided I would read the novel. And when I read the novel, there was an awful lot in it that I didn't find in the average adaptation of it. So I think what we really wanted to do when we decided we would give this a go, if you will, we wanted to stay true to the way that Dickens wrote the novel. And that's basically how we went about it. We, kitchen table, laptop, and the novel. And that's how we went through our process. And we basically read it, like, together.
Over and over and over.
And decided how we would approach it from the very beginning of how Dickens started it to the way that he ended it, and we tried to stay very true to that and use the language that's in the novel.
What was the challenge? I mean, how long did it take you to actually come up with the final product, Nathan?
All summer.
All summer, yeah.
All summer.
Yeah.
I was sure this was going to be an easy task. I was like, sure, we can write our own, it's fine.
Yeah.
I think I've heard you say that a number of times.
Yeah.
I say it when I approach anything. I always think everything's going to be
It's not
easy.
but that's not a bad way to approach things.
It
though.
wasn't easy.
No,
I
it wasn't
really
easy.
thought, I was anticipating like, we can knock that out in 2 days. Well, it took like 2 months. And it really, I think we have a kind of different perspective on A Christmas Carol. Like, I don't particularly see it as a solely Christmas story, and I don't think Jen does either.
No, not at all.
So what we wanted to show in our production of A Christmas Carol is the story is really about the choices you make throughout your life and how they affect the outcome. That's what the story is about. You can make choices, and whatever your choices are, they're going to affect the way the rest of your life plays out. And it was very important for us to show that Ebenezer Scrooge isn't miserable. He's not a miserable person in this production of A Christmas Carol. He's realistic, and he's frank, and he's kind of to the point, and he's bitter, I would say. He starts out that way.
Yeah.
And what we really wanted to show is how he got that way.
Right.
And you don't feel that with how we've seen it adapted before, illustrated it thoroughly? Do you feel that what you guys have done is thoroughly illustrating how he got to be that bitter point?
Well, it seems clearer in the book because you see a man that is getting older. I would say he's probably about 60 years old in the book. And he hasn't done a lot of reflecting on the choices that he's made in his life. And he put the highest priority on his career, if you will, which we see in modern life all the time.
Right.
Sure.
So he put a high emphasis on career and money making and moving himself forward in business, but he didn't put a high emphasis or high priority on people in his life. And he let the people in his life just drop away one by one. And so he doesn't have any intimate relationships. So he's isolated himself, basically. And so it's basically an illustration of what is going to happen to you if you isolate yourself from relationships.
Right.
Sure.
I guess I would ask you, I mean, so what has been the challenge as far as writing this? Because the one thing you want to do is you want to be able to tell a good story. You also don't want this thing to be 4 or 5.5 hours. So what have you had to do to kind of make sure that this was a lively show, but yet it has a good running time?
I think, interestingly enough,
It's the other way around.
it's the other way
actually.
around. Christmas Carol's a short story.
Very short novel. It's only 100 pages.
So the challenge was, how do we make it long enough to be a show
Okay.
and not be a one act?
Yeah.
Because the novel itself is a very quick read. So that really was more of the challenge, is how do we flesh this out? What do we want to show, and what are the things from the book that aren't necessarily dialogue that we want to show? Because there's a lot of really beautiful descriptive writing that Charles Dickens did about the mood or what's happening in London at the time.
Colorful.
Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't lend itself to dialogue necessarily.
Right.
or that isn't dialogue
And
in the book.
you guys needed to translate
Yes,
that.
Right.
that's what we had to do. We had to take all of that information that's in the paragraphs and it's not spoken dialogue and convey that to the audience and make it so that they know that information. So you have to turn it into dialogue. So that was challenging.
Now, how does this, in your duties in this particular show, how does that change, or how is that enhanced what you're going to be doing, whether it's costuming or designing the sets? How has that helped you, or at least given you kind of a leg up on all of this, seeing that you're the ones who did the adaptation of this?
Mm-hmm. I think for me, to tell you the truth, I don't think it changes how I would approach costuming the show very much, except for the fact that I'm very happy that we have a show that goes very closely with the book, because the book is really is wonderful.
Beautiful.
And we tried to keep Dickens' words, and
You try to parallel it, so to speak.
we did. We tried to use Dickens' words as much as we possibly could. So it's really Dickens still, and not the Jen and Nathan version of
Right.
Dickens.
Okay. Let's talk about now the next step has already taken place. Is auditions have already happened. They've already done their blocking and all that. Have you had a chance to see the folks that have been put in place? What is your thought of the show? Kind of share that vision as being folks who have seen enough shows at this theater company. What excites you about this particular show that's going to be hitting the stage, I believe, on the 29th of November?
That's
You
right,
got 3 weekends, right?
Yeah. I think, at least with the Massasoit Theatre Company, I can't speak for every theater company, but we really kind of view producing a show as a collaborative effort. So we had the method of being involved in the casting. So it wasn't like we wrote the script, we handed it over, and we walked away, and now we got to see who they put in place. We were involved in the process, so that we could say, we don't see this person, or this person maybe doesn't have the trait we were looking for, or the feel we were going for when we wrote this dialogue. So we've been involved in that process from day one, which has been great.
Yeah, very lucky to be involved in that. Yep.
And we've popped into rehearsals, you have,
Oh, wow.
to see what's going on, and things are going smoothly, and people seem to be having a good time. And we've had a lot of good feedback from the actors about how this script for A Christmas Carol is different than other Christmas carols they've been in, which is nice. It's nice to hear the actors say.
There's not a staleness to it. It's
Right.
like, at least there's a bit of an excitement about.
Yeah.
There's this may go down the path, but there's little things that are added in that just kind of spices it up.
Exactly. Like we made a concerted effort to see the characters all multiple times throughout the story. So you see people in the first scene in present day, you also see them in the future. So people show up repeatedly, so there's familiarity to even the small characters like Mrs. Dilber, the maid.
Yep.
You see her repeatedly through the show, so by the end of the show, you know exactly who Mrs. Dilber is and where she's at.
Yeah.
And we really tried to incorporate even some of the smaller characters throughout the whole story. So it's not so much vignettes as you kind of get to see everybody kind of progress.
Right.
And let's be sure to let folks know, just if you're tuning in part of the way through this program, we are speaking with Jennifer Spagone and Nathan Fogg, and they adapted Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and this is going to be hitting the stage. I believe it's 3 weekends, and I think it's only one Friday, right? There's only one Friday?
Yes.
Yep.
So you have starting the 29th, the 30th, December 6th, 7th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. Now the 12th, of course, is a Friday.
Yep.
If you go to a Friday or Saturday show, 8 p.m. show, and there's a matinee on Sundays at 3 o'clock. And the number to be able to get tickets, 508-427-1234. I don't think that number has ever changed. That's why I'm able to just kind of spit it out in half a second here. Talk to me a little bit about the folks who are heading. You got two great people. Choreography and directing this is Corinne Mason, and then the lovable Steve Shannon, who's a part of this as well.
He absolutely is lovable.
Yeah, he is. He's wonderful.
Lovable guy. You've got some great folks, including yourselves, as being a part of this. Let's not forget Mark Rocheteau, who is your show producer. Talk to me about those folks and what they've done to kind of help push this thing along and get it to where it's at this moment.
I think we were really lucky because Corinne Mason, like you said, who's directing and choreographing, and Steve Shannon, who's music directing for us, really backed us up on this. And they said yes to a project that they didn't know what the script was going to be like. So we were really very lucky that they were willing to have some faith in our ability to do this. And so it's really great that they've come on board and stayed.
But let's look at it this way, though. You guys are theater veterans, and I think you guys have seen a lot of shows. You understand what's going on, so I can see why they would put their faith in the two of you, because you have enough knowledge as to what goes on, and probably have had tons of discussions over the years about certain stuff. So if it was just maybe one of the kids who had just graduated from the college and goes, "Oh, I want to do this," there might have been some. Well, let's talk about this first. But
still, though, there was some faith put in it. You just don't know. If a costume designer and a director are going to write a good script or not. So they did put that faith in the project, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And they're theater veterans too, and they're very, very talented people as well. So yeah.
And I think it was we had an initial meeting after the script was mostly complete, I would say, where there was like this great sigh of relief because we all read through. And Jen and I had been, we would write a scene and then read it. But all summer long, it was like Jen and Nathan playing every part in A Christmas Carol at the kitchen table. And so we had a production meeting where everyone who was involved in the production kind of sat around with the script and we read through the whole thing. And there was kind of this great sigh of relief afterwards because Steve and Corinne and everyone were like, "This script is great." And Jen and I were like, "Whew."
Yeah.
Because you don't know. What you may think is great, what I may think is great, may read poorly to Corinne or to Steve or to Mark.
Sure.
So I think there was a great sigh on everyone's front. Like they were relieved that they signed on to a project that had a script they could get behind. We were relieved that they liked it because we'd been working all summer on it and was like, well, what if they don't like it? What are we going to do? What if it isn't what we think it is in our brains, Because you can, it's easy to get lost in your own project. So there was just great collective, now we can do a show. And it's been great. And Corinne is young, and she's a part-time professor at Massasoit, and she's really put a lot of effort into getting student involvement in the show, which is wonderful. Because sometimes at a community college, students don't have the time to commit. You've been in them. It's a lot of time. To do a show. The time commitment is a lot.
It could be three to 4 nights, and not including Tech Week. With Tech Week, you have to, it's not only about fitting into the costumes, but it's setting the lighting and running through, and then of course doing, your final run through without, we should be well off book by then. But the idea is to, get everything all set up for opening night, because that's what it's all about.
Right. Yep.
That's the fun part. Now, have you had a chance to see some of the rehearsal? Have you seen Scrooge? Have you seen some of the key play? Talk to me about what you've been witnessing in rehearsals and some of the folks who are going to be on stage.
Well, we have a great Scrooge, and one of the things about Ebenezer Scrooge that we really wanted to convey was that he's not so much angry as he is indifferent to everything, and he's kind of just, again, like I said, isolated himself from everyone and their feelings about this. So when Christmas time comes around to him, he just doesn't see what the big fuss is all about. And our Scrooge is really very good at adding the wit involved and kind of like a sarcastic kind of edge, and not so much like an angry, grumpy guy. He's funny. And I think it would be very uncomfortable to watch someone be angry and nasty for an hour and a half, and he's not doing that. He's really layering it.
Sure.
Yeah.
He has a very layered performance, and the fact that he understands the humor and he has a very good knowledge of Dickensian language.
Yeah.
So he's not, that can be a stumbling block for a lot of actors.
And are you able to unveil who your Scrooge is, or is that a secret?
Don't know. It's Matt Orell. Yeah. Is Matt a student? Is he a student?
I don't think so. I think he's going to be a student in the spring.
Okay.
Okay.
But he has a very adept hand with the language.
Yes.
So, which is good because he's on stage the whole show. So that wasn't a stumbling block for him, which was great. And he's brought some really, really funny moments to the character. And I think too often you can't get behind Scrooge because he's miserable the whole time.
Right.
And in order for the show to work, really work, you kind of have to root for him. You know what I mean? At the end of the day,
you have to see yourself in him too. You have to see some modern attitudes in him, because they do. There are people that are a lot like him.
That's very true.
It's very true. So he has to be relatable.
sure.
So I think it would be much harder to relate to someone who's just angry and grumpy all the time. And he's really done a good job.
And two, I think you see all these people in Scrooge's life through these flashbacks with the past and the current visions of the present. There are all these people that at one time or another were important to Ebenezer Scrooge.
Absolutely, yep.
And so if he's not likable, why are all these people rooting for him?
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
There has to be something.
There has to be something about him
Yep.
that attracted all these people to him to begin with. You know, and that's really what we tried to show. Why does little Fan love him so much? Why, you know, did his fiance love him so much? Why does his nephew every single year go to his office and try and get him to come to Christmas dinner? What about this man is so endearing that people wouldn't just give up on him?
Right.
And he's doing a really wonderful job of
Doing a
portraying
great job.
that.
Yep.
You aren't going to believe this, but we have 3 minutes. We have less than 3 minutes. Is there
Wow.
anything
Wow.
that we haven't talked about, but you feel is very important to letting folks know about this show, that they should get out to it starting on November 29th?
I'm sure. I think that it's going to be a great way for people to kick off the holiday season.
Absolutely.
We're really trying to do our best to make it as authentic and impressive.
A family show.
And it's absolutely a family show and visually appealing.
Yep.
I think that it's a pretty quick run. I would say that the show runs about an hour and a half
Yeah, with the intermission.
with the intermission. It's a great way to kick off your holiday season locally. Come see some local talent.
Yep.
Just once again, so folks know, it begins on the 29th of November. You can always get tickets at 508. Call the ticket line, 508-427-1234. You can go on to Massasoit's website. It's easy just to Google it. We'll actually put it up on the screen here in a second. I want to thank both of you for
Thank you.
coming in today
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
talking. And I hope that it's
Great. Thanks.
a successful production and good seeing you.
Thank you.
And just also want to let you know that there's going to be a lot of hard work behind the scenes. A couple of folks that we didn't mention, like Matt Kaminsky and Brian Willis, who
Sure.
are going to be working to build the set and get the lighting all set. So a lot of hard work goes into it. Get out, see this program. Go ahead.
We should let your audience know too that we did come into the new century and we do have online ticketing.
Okay.
So there's a link on the Massasoit website where they can also purchase the tickets without calling the box office if
Okay.
they prefer.
Anything else from you?
Just wanted to mention that some beautiful music also in the show. We've incorporated carolers and music, and so that's another added aspect of the show.
You want to get into the spirit. This is the
That's right.
perfect way to do it. So get on out.
Absolutely.
See A Christmas Carol hitting the stage as of November 29th. Go on to the Massasoit website to find out more details for Jen Spagone and Nathan Fogg, as well as Mark and Paul. Another Crosstalk. Have a great day.